this video, we'll discuss parallel lines. Now, parallel lines are two lines that are on the same plane and never intersect. And when we mark them, we're going to mark them with a little triangle or arrow on the line. And then when we write it out, we're going to put two vertical lines to represent parallelness. So it's important to know the difference between parallel and skew, because two lines that are skew also will never intersect, but they're not on the same plane. And so to help show what that means, here's an example. If I look at this image, I can see that line DE and line CF, those are parallel. They're marked with this little arrow in the middle to represent that they're parallel. However, they're on this one plane, whereas line GH is going a different direction, but is made to look like it's never going to intersect these two lines. So what we can say is that line GH is skew with these other two lines. Now we can also talk about the transversal when we have two lines being cut by another line. It's being intersected by two or more coplanar lines. So what we see here is we need to recognize that there's different types of angles constructed. So if we look at these two lines are going diagonally up to the right, we'd say this one that's almost vertical is its transversal, and we say all the angles that are formed inside are called interior angles. The ones on the outside are called exterior angles, and that helps us lead to some specific relationships. For example, there are corresponding angles, whereas if I took this line and I moved it over, those angles would both be in the same general location. So like top left, bottom right, bottom left, and those are called the corresponding angles. Alternate interior angles are interior angles that are on the opposite side of that transversal. Alternate exterior on the outside, and they're on the opposite sides of the transversal. And then same side interior are the two angles that are on the same side, inside and on the same of the transversal. Now, why does all that matter? Because if we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, we get a lot of unique relationships where those corresponding angles will be congruent. The alternate interior angles are congruent. The alternate exterior angles are congruent. And then those same side interior angles will always sum to 180 degrees. And if you notice here, a unique thing we have is that it's if and only if. What that means is if we flipped this around, the converse is also a true statement. So instead of saying if two lines are cut by transversal are parallel, if the corresponding angles are congruent, we could say if the corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So we know that the relationship goes both directions. Also, when we have parallel lines cut by transversal, we know that the angles are either congruent or their measures will sum to 180 degrees. It has to be one of those two facts. So here we have a statement. Even though it's not marked specifically on the image, it says that line GE is parallel to line HC, so that's all we need is that statement. And we know that the measure of angle GDB, which is marked here, 73 degrees, and we want to know what are the other 7 measures. So we can use some of our basic relationships of angles, such as the fact that angle FDE is a vertical angle with angle GDH. Also, we know that GDB and GDF, those have to be a linear pair because they're on the same line and they are supplementary angles and they're adjacent. Then we know that its vertical angle will also be a linear pair with angle GDB. Now we can go to the angles on the bottom. And what we can recognize is that we have corresponding angles and alternate interior angles. We could say that angle GDB and CBD are alternate interior angles. And then we can say that GDB is corresponding with HBA. You also could have said that FDE is corresponding with DBC. These are all relationships that exist and they're all true. Lastly, we know these other two angles have to be 107 degrees because of their relationships. With our original angle that was provided, we know that these two are same side interior, these two are same side interior, but we also know these are alternate interior angles, or GDF and HBD are corresponding angles. And then once we know this one, we know these two would have to be vertical angles, or we could say that it's a linear pair with HBA right here. So there's a lot of ways we see these relationships. We just have to figure out the one that makes sense to us as we're exploring the angle measures.